Hi Gisele. Hi Avery.
Hi, François.
I'm Francois. I am VP Business Development here at Paradyme Investments. And Gisele and I used to work together a couple of years ago at TetraView, which was a company that made 4D cameras. And the intent was essentially to use it with self-driving cars for the movie industry, but also in real estate. So basically the ability to capture a complete space in a matter of seconds and then importing it into one of the gaming engines, being able to overlay texture and create anything from for maintenance, for example, knowing exactly where the electrical is, where the HVAC is, but also to do tours, online tours of homes. So a lot of different applications. Unfortunately, the company wasn't quite able to raise the funding they were looking for. So as Paul Banks, who by the way is an amazing human being, said, as long as he has the camera and the equipment in his garage, the company will not die and he will carry on working with it. So good luck to Paul. But again, we're always talking here at Paradyme about the importance of relationships. And here we are. Gisele is a scientist by education, by trade. I was working in marketing, branding for high tech, and now here I am in real estate. And Gisele is also doing something completely different. Even though she's still a scientist at heart and working with science, she's decided to do something else, and that's what we have Gisele with us today to talk about.
Thank you, François, and thank you, Avery.
You're welcome. So, just a little introduction about myself. I am the marketing director here at Paradyme, and that's all you need to know. But on to you. I guess what we want to start off with is just hearing a little bit about your background. And I mean, you're a scientist, that's an amazing accomplishment. And I guess the pivotal point, whether it's in your childhood, teen years, or your young adulthood, when did you decide you wanted to become a scientist, where this journey seemed to have began for you?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am Gisele Maxwell. I am currently the president and founder of Altus Consulting. We actually provide scientific services, and I have moved on to other things. I am an author. I'm writing a book, Free and Rich Beyond Wealthy. And this one is about entrepreneurship. So I will explain to you how I evolved into entrepreneurship. As far as science is concerned, I'm one of the blessed ones who was born in a scientific household. So I did not know anything else. Very young, I never thought I would do anything else but science. Up until actually I got to high school and discovered I had other talents. I could play the piano very well. I could also, I really enjoyed literature, arts, letters. I actually was presented to the national competition in philosophy in high school. So I didn't know anymore. And my mom always told me, well, you have to do what gives you the most options.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, okay, so I'll do science.
Yeah. It just makes sense.
I went into science. And I really have a passion for science. And that's what was coming easy to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the easy way.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind me asking, what field of science is it? Is it biological, chemistry, physics?
Well, I have a chemical engineering diploma.
Oh, wow, okay.
I have a master's in material science, and I have a PhD in physics. So
all around.
just, again, couldn't decide. But that gave me a very rounded education.
Mm-hmm.
And my field of choice was crystals.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had a fascination for crystals. And then I started during my PhD to apply them into lasers.
Wow,
So
okay.
we grow crystals to make lasers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've been doing. I was approached during the last year of my PhD by a professor from Stanford. He told me to come work in his lab. I didn't know where Stanford was at the time. I said, well, okay, sounds good. I heard California, so I like that part.
Yeah.
And I did my postdoc there. I was hired within 2 weeks. That's the beauty of this country. I was hired within 2 weeks to do some consulting for other companies. Started to work full time for one of them. I just continued that way. I worked for a company for 5 years, then was hired by another company, always as a scientist, but also a manager. And then I was approached by an investor who told me, you should start your own company. I said, oh, but I don't know what to do. He said, well, we'll help you. Okay. So I started my own company.
Wow.
And I was the CEO of that company for 12 years.
Wow.
We developed a technology to grow crystals that really evolved into an industry technology. Initially, it was a lab tool. And we were able to bring this to markets up until my investors said, well, we're going to do something else now, so we're going to close your company.
Wow.
I said, oh, okay. So we closed the company, and the customer said, well, you can close. But by the time I had really developed into an entrepreneur. So I said, well, then we won't close, just like Paul Banks. I didn't have the machine in my garage, but I had the technology in my head, so that's what Altus is doing now. We are helping people get their own technology in-house. And those 12 years of being a CEO have really shown me what entrepreneurship was about. So in a startup, building up a company from scratch. And contrary to what I was told, I didn't get that much help just because people are, doing other things.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I need to bring this to the world, bring them my experience, tell them how to build a business in a way that's not as hard as it was for me, since, I didn't know, so I had to invent everything and go as I was going. But so I'm hoping the book will help people that way, and they will get my own experiences in the book. I've heard horror stories within my 12 years for other companies, and so it's all in the book. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm bringing my experiences, also giving the technicalities of building a business, whether it's a flower shop or a high-tech business. Some things are not that different. Some things are different.
Yeah.
But I want people to understand mostly that, in my case, the main lesson I learned was to never put all my eggs in the same basket. That's something we say in French. And that you should really diversify what you're doing.
Yeah.
And also that, everybody is an entrepreneur in that you build a family, it requires people skills. You balance your own, checkbooks. You actually are operating a mini business at home already.
That's a good point.
So that's something you can bring in,
It's kind of what Harold calls being the CEO of the life of you.
Yeah.
Basically, right?
Yes.
It's actually a very good analogy. So what I'd love to talk about is, in the summary that you kind of sent me about the book, two words resonated with me. The first one is that this is something that's possible for everybody. And then something that intrigued me a lot is when you build something from the heart. And I'd love for you to tell us a little more about that, what that means.
Actually, this is one of the myths, I think, that people have about entrepreneurs, that we do this for money. And some do. I mean, I have, in 2000, I actually was sitting at a lunch in Lyon, that's the town where I'm from, at a conference, at a lunch with a scientist. He was telling me, I'm going to build my own business because I'm ready to make money. And I thought, okay. And he's been building his business, and he's been successful, so I'm not saying it doesn't work. I do think that's why the title of the book is Free and Rich Beyond Wealthy, because this approach could get you wealthy. But I believe that entrepreneurs are people who come from a passion. It can be anything. It can be a passion that they run into when they were encountering a problem. They found a solution, and that became something that they really wanted to do. It doesn't need to be something that you were born with, because passions can happen at any time. But I think the art of entrepreneurship is really to take that passion and bring it to the world. I do feel we have a responsibility to our gifts. So bring it to the world in the form of your own business. And once you do this, whether you become really, really rich or you make a living, or it's still something you do on the side and you actually have kept your day job, well, that's very fulfilling.
Yeah.
And so that's my approach to entrepreneurship. And I think if people want to do it this way, it's much easier because you actually grow into it.
Yeah. Do you think there's a certain mindset that people have when going into becoming an entrepreneur that can prevent them from succeeding? Like, I mean, you said going into entrepreneurship with the passion that's what you embody, and that's where your motivation stems from. Do you think there is a way that people can... Let me think how to phrase this.
Well, actually, there's a lot of expressions, right?
Yeah.
If you do something that you're passionate about, it doesn't even feel like a job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most people give up just as they were about to succeed. So, yes, there is an element of passion for sure. And I think that if you're passionate about something, you've probably researched it more than anything else that you've ever researched, and you're better at speaking about it. But then to the point that I think you're trying to make, the difficulty is, well, what do you need to be able to get over the last hurdle when everything seems so difficult, when you're ready to give up because it's not going quite as well as you thought it would? What is that extra that you need to be able to push through and really kind of give the gift to the world?
I think entrepreneurs have to be flexible because things happen. When I went to engineering school, the director of the school addressed us the first day, and he said, "You are going to become engineers. You're going to work for industries. We are going to teach you a lot of chemistry here, but we also are going to teach you to become flexible and adaptable human beings." And I think that's key for entrepreneurship. I think, well, you do need a vision, and but you can't be locked in that. Sometimes you have to reassess your markets. Sometimes you have to reassess your technology. Sometimes it's not the right time. It's like a relationship. Sometimes it's bad timing, and you can't really force it. I think some people will start developing a business and then notice that people aren't that interested. So they can give up, or they can say, well, let's see what I can do to make it better. And it's also a constant dialogue. I think if you don't establish a dialogue between what you're doing and how people are receiving it, it's doomed to fail. It's bound to failure because you need the feedback. You need to ask people constantly, so if you were to rate my product, what would it be? And if they give you less than a 10, you need to tell them, what can I do to make it a 10? And you need to go that way.
What do you think, since we're on the topic of giving sort of advice, as someone who's a young entrepreneur and just getting their foot in the door, do you have any tips and advice for how exactly they should start it? Aside from a mindset switch, what are some tools that they can utilize in order to really push themselves into the market?
Well, there are many tools that they can... Actually, I have a whole chapter in my book on this. But when people assess a product and a market, I think it's very wise to take surveys. You can go and take a survey online these days and send a survey. And really ask people. That's what I would do. If I were starting tomorrow a florist shop or a restaurant, I think I would go to the location where I'm planning to go to, and I would ask people, here's what I'm planning to do, what do you think?
That's a good point.
you know.
Yeah.
Again, it's that dialogue that I think a lot of people are missing.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, especially in high tech. How many times have I heard, "Oh, our company is tough." Okay, well, I hope that, you really can make that big splash you're hoping for, because sometimes it's a big flop,
Yeah.
And I'm not really an advocate of this.
Mm-hmm.
I know people do it, but typically they already have, hopefully, some insight that, yes, it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking to everyday people like us, and I want people to know that as long as they have that in them and they talk to other people, most likely they'll get them excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it's interesting because that's one of the things that Ryan does. Every time we look at a new project,
Yeah.
2 or 3 of us will fly to the location on different days, weekdays and weekends, to look at what the environment looks like. If we're going to open a mixed use, for example, which is going to be residential and retail, like the one we had in Denver, for example, and which is on the higher end, walking around, seeing what else is there, what people do on the weekends, what people do at night, is a really good way for us to judge and to get a sense of that. And then going back to everybody, we take a very similar approach here. We just launched our Reg A last Friday. And Reg A is kind of the dream child of Ryan and Kara, who have always wanted to make real estate investing available to everybody. For the longest time, it was an investment vehicle that was very privileged. You had to have money to be able to make money. But I think we're seeing a shift in the world today, as per your book, and in real estate, where now and we'll address 2 things actually: the availability for everyone to be able to invest, but also, as you said earlier, not putting all your eggs in one basket, and diversification, which is what the Reg A is. Instead of just investing into one project, as we do with our Reg Ds, the Reg A is a diversified asset fund that allows us to put funds into multiple projects in multiple asset classes, and that is all part of the risk mitigation strategy. We do it for real estate. You do it for everything else, really.
Yes.
Floral shop, restaurant, science. So I totally understand everything you're saying about it being about for everybody. We all have something that we can do. What it boils down to at the end is being resilient. You also made another very good point, which is unless you're talking to people, it's the whole concept. Oh my God, we're doing such a great job. Aren't we? We're doing such a great job. We're in stealth mode. We love us. And then you go out of stealth mode and it flops because people just don't like you as much as you like yourself sometimes, right? So the basis for your book is also stories. Do you have some stories you could share with us, either beautiful stories or horror stories that would help people?
Yes, I have plenty of those. Actually, I have more than 1 per chapter in my book. So, yes. Let me see if I can pick one.
You can pick 2 or 3. That's fine too.
Yes. Well, when I had my company and I was the CEO, and so our industry is very small. And I was contacted by a journalist after one of us had completely flopped, and they asked me why that happened. And so it was an established company, and they were making a certain equipment for our technology, and they were contacted by a very big company to actually produce from this equipment they were selling, instead of just selling the equipment to them. And it was a very, very big order. And they said, okay. So to be able to expand, they got a loan from that very big company. And we are in a cruel industry that way, in that the products, it takes a long time to take a product to market. And every time we change something to the same product, well, it's like doing it from scratch again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very very difficult that way. And so that company had a certain number of milestones that were linked to that loan, and they failed with some milestones. But they had put all their resources towards that particular order because it was so big, it was going to make the company. And so the big company just pulled out the loan, out of the loan, and that little company just went bankrupt overnight.
Oh, wow.
And I had some stock in them, so they had been doing really well. I was lucky enough to sell it before. But then, yes, overnight, boom, it went to zero.
Wow.
And that was it. And so as an entrepreneur, I was approached by one of those big companies, and my investor said, take it, it's going to make your company. And I said, no, I'm out. I'm not doing it. And so that's one of the chapters of my book that there might be along the way some very tempting ways to expand, but we have to be careful with those.
I guess being wise in your decision making, not being
Yes.
tempted by the big
And
wealthy investors that come in.
and another great example of not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Correct.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that. Absolutely.
That's
Yes.
why I told that story.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very sad example, but yes, it happened.
Wow.
We see that happen
Yes.
with not just with science, with anything. It's the promise of this great success, but when you're dependent on one person for your future,
Yeah.
you have to understand that comes with a lot of risks, right? Any other stories for us?
No, I want to mention one thing though. When I became the CEO, which is what pretty much all entrepreneurs do, whether again it's a restaurant or a high-tech company, you do manage people, just like I said, you do with your family, but when you start having people depending on you, you lose sleep over it. Maybe that's why some people quit. But also when you succeed, you're making some people's life better, other than your own products making other people's lives better. So that's the wealthy part of the title. That's the rich part, of the title. And so when I started as a CEO, I got all the fears coming in. And I thought, you're a scientist, you have no business being a CEO. You have no business having those people, having that responsibility. And they call this the imposter syndrome. And it's very real. You freeze, basically. But at the time, I was also the vice president of the French-American Chamber of Commerce in San Francisco. And we had a group of executive women that would gather once a month. And we were all under NDA, and we had executives from very big companies, and we would just we would call this our shrink session for CEOs. And we would just let out our fears and problems, and I noticed that people who had been seasoned CEOs before still had that imposter syndrome, so that kind of relieved me. And I think that, a nice support behind your venture, other than money, is useful. And I think that's why I'm hoping that the book will do that for people, help them, conquer some of those fears and preconceived ideas, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I will have also an online course that is linked to the book.
Oh, okay, great.
And we will have groups of people that can help.
Yeah.
Yes, I was very fortunate that way. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You and I had the conversation about leadership training, mentorship.
Yes.
And that does. You make a very good point.
Yeah.
Having a great idea is one part of the brain. Managing people, understanding the responsibility. I don't know if I shared this with you when we were talking about Vistage in particular. And I was lucky enough when I did the training with Vistage that week in San Diego, I was mentored by two amazing guys, Dick and Bob, and I know it sounds like a joke, but
I know, I was
Dick and
thinking in
Bob
my
walk
head, I
into
was
a
like,
bar, but it really
I was like,
isn't.
are you disguising their names?
No, but we did some exercises that were all about opening yourself up, right? And being vulnerable. Being vulnerable, being able to say, you know, I feel like an imposter. Can I do this?
Yeah.
Unless you're able to be vulnerable that way and say, I'm not sure. Step number one, you're not going to have the humility you need to be able to do it. But number two is you're not going to have the ability to seek help and be able to see someone and say, I can't do this, help me.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely critical. But the most powerful moment I had during that week was actually understanding the responsibility. In this case, it was training to become a mentor, right? So understanding the responsibility of having to mentor executives. But what it spilled into my everyday life was the responsibility of managing people, of knowing that you can help people grow if you're good at what you do, or you can shut them down if you're bad at what you do.
Yeah.
It's a combination of tough love, right? Constructive criticism.
Yes.
Because you can't always say to everybody, oh my God, you're the best,
Yeah.
and hope that positive reinforcement is going to help them grow. No, unless you can look at people and say, you're a great scientist. Do that, you're so good. Your whole extrovert side, etc., is not that great. Paul always used to tell this joke. How do you recognize the scientist? The scientist is the one who, the extrovert scientist is the one who looks at your shoes rather than his own shoes. And there's a lot of truth in that, right? The ability to be extrovert. And I think you make a very good point, and I'm actually thrilled to hear that you're going to have this kind of online course and online support because it's critical. I think a lot of people fail because they're unable to ask for help, or they don't even know what help they need.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. That's absolutely great, and I think that makes it more about everybody, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yes, and I was helped that way by many people. Even when I decided to write the book, I can sit down and write, but then I didn't know how to get it published. Didn't know how to market for it. But I got some good mentors. I got a mentor. Her name is Peggy McCall. She has published 16 books, and she had an online program. And then I got one-on-one with her, and that was very helpful. Because again, my imposter syndrome. Who are you to write a book? You do science. Go write some science. But no, I had that in me. I had to let it out, and I think a lot of people have something in them that they need to let out, and the world will benefit from it. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions when you become an entrepreneur that it's only you and it's only about you, and that only you can be the entrepreneur and only you can start your own company, only you can write your own book. And there's that myth that if you ask for help and you ask for support, then you're not really an entrepreneur because now you're looking for support elsewhere. But it's amazing that you have that in your book, and you're basically dismantling that myth, saying no, support will actually make you more successful.
Support and asking are key. That there is no point reinventing everything. And on top of it, people who can help, they're typically really happy to help.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. We could probably add to Harry's quote, you are the CEO of you and you are the employee of you.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
It's complicated, and I think that's why I love reading This Is For Everybody. At the same time, it gives me pause because I agree with you 100%. I think it's inside of everybody to be able. We all have gifts, and I think you made a very good point at the beginning about the fact that it is our responsibility to share our gift.
Yes.
Especially if we can help make it a better world. And a better world doesn't mean that you have to change the world. It means that you can change your world, your family, your friends, give people jobs, your community. Absolutely. It can be on a city, state, federal, global level. It doesn't matter as long as you're making a positive impact.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, I think the everybody part comes down to people being able to accept that you have to be vulnerable, you have to ask questions, you have to ask for help. All these things make you stronger. They do not make you weaker by any standards.
Not at all.
Having guidance, it's so important. Mostly when you're just starting out, you don't know everything, and I think that's where humility comes in, and being humble, like I don't know everything, and having a book, having an online course, having a support group, having mentors, it helps you and
Yes.
guides you to success.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to surround yourself with people who want you to succeed as well. So I think that's something important with entrepreneurship as well.
Yes, it is definitely, and I was very lucky to find these people.
Mhm.
But again, when you ask, most people are happy to help.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd hate to burst your bubble at the age of 21, Avery. I'm more than twice your age, believe me. Even when you get to my age, you will not know everything.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of life.
Yeah.
We're in a constantly evolving world. I mean, look at the branding marketing side. You know, I can brand and market to us and to a couple of generations, but now I have to market to 21-year-olds. It's difficult. We have to embrace social media. You were talking about how to market your book.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
And 10 years ago, you would have done the circuit, right? It's book signings,
Yes.
meeting at conferences. Now you can find an Avery, which has been a great addition to our team, and she'll have you in front of the world in the
Yes.
space of minutes. That's absolutely
Yes.
incredible.
I had a phone call with my publisher last week, and I asked them, I said, "You are not going to send me tons of books that I'm going to have to store in my garage, are you?" And they laughed. They said, "No, we don't do that anymore." I said, okay, that's good.
So let me ask you a question. We're just talking about how easy it is today to reach the world in seconds, quite literally.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at, for example, and it's something I was thinking about last week. I have a brother who lives in Australia. I can literally get him news within seconds, whereas 20 years ago, I would have had to write a letter, and he would have found out about my great news, certainly not in real time.
Right.
So back to your book, do you feel that this is a better time than ever to be an entrepreneur because you have access to so many more resources? Or is it more difficult than ever because there's so much more competition right off the get-go?
It's yes and yes. Yes, the resources are easy to find. And there is a lot of competition, but there also are many niches. So, and it's key to find the niche that we're going to address. I am, with the book and the online course, and we're also going to do some workshops. I think initially I have a tendency to think that we need to, start people when they're young. So we will target colleges, maybe high schools, to explain to young people that they should not just get stifled in because they feel that they need to get an 8-to-5 job, and they can, yes, they can do that. But if they have other things they can do, it's also possible.
Yes.
And it's it doesn't have to be either this or that. And I think there's enough people in the world and enough niches that, yes, there is competition, but, I don't know how many people are on the internet these days, but it's, I don't know, 2-3 billion people. Even if what you're doing captures, I don't know, 10% of 1% of it, you've touched a few people already.
Absolutely.
So,
Plus, you were talking about restaurants,
Yes.
floral stores. These are very local businesses, right?
Yeah.
So you still have that ability to get the resources from a global perspective, but you're targeting something that's a lot more local.
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't you tell us, Avery, because you're 21 years old, and kind of in the spirit of entrepreneurship, when do you feel that you became entrepreneurial with your life?
I think right about when I got out of high school, because it was interesting you brought that up, that a lot of young people, mostly today with how many people are being shuffled into colleges, they have this one-track mindset that I have to get a job, I have to get a degree, and then my degree is my job for the rest of my life. Whatever I got my degree in, that's where I have to put my career pathway. And I'm working 9 to 5 until I retire, which is completely okay. Some people are okay with that, but I know there's a lot of people who, they have other passions and they want to branch out and they want to put their hands in a bunch of different realms and not work a 9 to 5. So I feel like in high school I was able to learn very quickly from my father, who really was an entrepreneur in his own way and re-innovated himself in his life. I was able to see that, I don't have to follow this traditional lifestyle. I have passions. I surf and I climb and I backpack and I love the outdoors, and I try to incorporate those passions into my everyday life, whether it be through marketing tactics and get other people engaged with those activities, or whether it be through volunteering and nonprofits and, you know, connecting myself with my community. It's I find it very important for young people to hear the message that, you know, you can pursue what your dreams and passions are. And, you know, as long as you have the support and you talk to mentors and you're being guided into the right direction, you can 100% do that. And I feel that message is so important to share right now, because I just see so many people my age getting stuck.
I know.
And it's so disheartening, because I have even friends who feel stuck at this, you know, 9-to-5 job, or they're not even pursuing what their degree was in. Now they're just kind of stuck in this cycle of like, oh, when will I be able to do the things I love? And sometimes it does take a risk and a jump, but I think it's important for people to understand that if you're being guided correctly, then that jump is minimized to an extent.
Yes, and this is what makes your life rich.
Yes.
Too. So, and that's, I believe, makes us eventually feel happy. And yeah, I think it's very crucial, and that's why I want to go address young people and see if we can help them that way. You know, pretty much expand your horizons. I actually had a workshop years ago that it was 9th grade young girls. And there was the title of the workshop, Expand Your Horizons. So we were speakers from different backgrounds, and, you know, showing those girls that anything is possible.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and this country is all about this, but this is true. And I think it's very, very important, yes.
Yeah, it's a cliche. Anything is possible. A lot of people hear that and they go, okay. But it is really true. You can, there's so many resources like we talked about in today's world where you can completely re-innovate yourself and make your passions your work.
Yes.
You just have to take the right precautions and the right step. It's not just you throw yourself in and you're like, okay, that's it. Like, there is work, there is patience, and there is failure. And I think people have to have that mindset, like, you will fail, but what sets people apart is, okay, what do you do after the failure?
It is one step at a time, you know, and as they say, you don't have to see the whole staircase, you just need to take the first step. And coming back to your example of a restaurant, we're going to go way back, my great-great-great-grandfather opened a restaurant in Burgundy.
Okay.
And it was a small town, and so they had the restaurant, and he figured out, it was a people's man, so he figured out very quickly that beyond food, it had to be a place where people would come and, you know, find some joy and have fun. And so word of mouth, you know, took, and the restaurant was actually very successful. We're talking about the early 1900s, so. So nowadays, when people open a restaurant, and we were talking about the power of social media and how they can start that way, but then, you know, they can branch out to catering and starting to sell their products online. And there was one thing I really believe, yes, we're, 7-8 billion human beings, but there's only one of us. So we all bring something unique, and there's no competition for this.
No, absolutely.
That's a really great point.
And to build on that, there's actually a really interesting theory, which is called putting a price to your dream. We all have dreams, right? And for some reason, as humans, we put these astronomical price tags on them. Because if you reach your dream, what's after? And there's a great story, if memory serves me well, there was a young guy who graduated from college, went to interview with Goldman Sachs to become a trader for them. And so the hiring manager said to him, you know, well, what's your dream? Oh my God, my dream is to work for the next 10 years, so put money aside so that then I can take a couple of months off and travel through Thailand. And he just looked at him and said, why don't I just write you a check right now for $10,000? Because that's the cost of traveling through Thailand for 2 months, and then you just work for us for the next 3 years. That is an incredible concept.
Yes.
Yeah.
When do people actually stop to put a price to their dream? That's what makes it unattainable, the
Yes.
label dream. And I think it's the same with business and building a company. It's, oh my God, my company, that's a dream. So you've
Yeah.
already labeled it
Yes.
as a possible impossibility.
Yeah.
Whereas if you actually break it down and go, okay, so what does it take? I want to open a restaurant.
Yeah.
Am I a good cook or do I know a really good cook?
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's number one. Location. Do people where I want to build a restaurant like to go to restaurants?
Yeah.
Market studies are so easy. Surveys, as you were saying
Yes.
earlier,
Yes.
right? Absolutely. People go to restaurants 5 times a week. They have disposable income. So what remains? How much does it cost to rent the space, to buy the food, to decorate it, to give it a niche feel, something
Yeah.
special? And that's the price of your dream.
Yeah.
So you see how you went from, I want to open my own restaurant, oh my God, to here are the steps. And that's exactly the point you were making 5 minutes ago, right? It's all about the steps and breaking it down into reachable goals with actionable items which are not crazy.
Yeah.
I want to open my restaurant. That's just so ethereal, right?
Yeah.
It's just it's not palpable. But if you break it down, good cook, location, decoration, money, etc., and you break it down and you can answer yes to all these questions and put a price,
Yeah.
you're more than halfway through there,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And another point I make in my book is to not let people tell you otherwise.
That's a really good point.
Because the naysayers are everywhere. And I still encounter them. But yes, it's a very important point. There's a famous story, and she was, I can't remember her name, but once I get to the punchline, you'll know who she is. She was a student in college, and she took a writing class because she thought she was a really good writer, and she had that passion for writing. And so she takes the most difficult writing class in college, and they have their first assignment. She does it, and the teacher calls her. The professor calls her, and he says, I really need to talk to you. Your assignment is horrible. You can't write. And she says, well, I'm on the scholarship, so if you get me from your class, I'm going to lose my scholarship. I can't go on. Please don't give me, let me pass the class. And he says, okay, I'll give you a deal. I will let you attend my class. I will give you a passing grade, but you have to promise me that you will never write another line your entire life. So she promises. She graduates college, and she starts working for a newspaper. And they have a column, and she's looking at it, and I would really love to write for it. She goes, well, I'm going to write, and so she writes something, and the editor comes to her and says, this is really good, I'm going to publish it. And she says, but I made the promise I would not write another line. So, no, you're a really good writer. You are writing for my column. So she becomes the writer for the column. And the editor goes, you really are good at this. You should write what you want to write. So she said, okay. So she wrote a book. Her book title, even though I can't remember her name, was Romancing the Stone.
Okay.
I think you all know the movie.
The movie, yes.
And she became, famous with her books. And so that's why I'm saying, do not let anybody tell you otherwise. You have a passion, just go for it.
Yes, exactly. I feel like a lot of people my age as well, like the younger generations, there are people around them who say, no, you can't do that, your age or your degree or your education, and for some reason they put a pause on their dreams and say, no, you can't do it because of so and blank, and it's so important that your book mentions that, don't listen to those people, listen to criticism and listen to perhaps how you could evolve yourself into something better, but to the people who say, oh, you can't do that, just
it's the can't. And Actually, instead of saying can't, people should say won't.
Mhm.
You know, that's a different vibe here.
Yeah.
Yes,
Everything,
absolutely.
if you replace that can't word by won't, you don't feel the same about it anymore. And yeah, it's very, very important to not let the fear. And we have our own voices, you know. Fear is inside ourselves too. So I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm not educated enough, I don't have time, I have responsibilities, you know.
So there's a lot more reason as to why not to
Yes.
do it, as to
Yes.
what to do it. So is kind of the core message, and is that what you talk about when you talk about from the heart, is believing in your passion and believing in yourself?
Yes. Yes, and that is you saying, yeah, you're hoping I made the point. That's in the introduction, actually.
Awesome.
And I'm on the last chapter and writing the conclusions, and I will re-emphasize this, to not let fears or people and their own fears stop us. Yes.
Oh, it's all very, very good advice. I'm excited. When is the book coming out?
It will be in 2020. I'm hoping before the summer.
Okay.
Yes.
Amazing.
So a summer
Yeah.
blockbuster. Well, we're certainly very excited to have you here this morning and to be able to talk to you about it. I think it's great hearing that it's for everybody.
Yeah.
And in today's world, it really should be about everybody. Resources out there,
Yeah.
markets are more approachable than they've ever been with competition.
Yes.
But that goes back to fear, etc., and kind of really believing. And these days, it's become so much easier to start a business, so much more economical, that why not take the chance, right?
Exactly.
You won't
Yes.
know until you try.
Yes,
That's a good point.
I agree.
Well, thank you very much, Gisele. It's
Thank
a
you,
pleasure
François.
seeing you
Thank you,
again.
Herbert.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. That
Of
was a
course.
pleasure.
Absolutely. And you know what? Let's do it again in a year or two and see what we're doing then, if we're
Yes.
doing something completely different.
Yeah.
I'd certainly love to. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of feedback once your book is out on how you've inspired people, what they've been able to accomplish thanks to the book. And we'd love to have you back again when you start getting those stories and
Yes.
kind of be able to tell people's stories based on what you wrote. I think that has to be incredibly gratifying.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sure it will be. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you, Gisele.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching and listening. And that's it.
And that's it. All right.